a bomb detonates at the feet of the Tsar's carriage, and instead of fleeing, Alexander II steps out into the snow. Why would the most guarded man in Russia walk toward the blast site while his killers are still close enough to strike again? By the end, you'll understand how a small circle of idealists turned into Russia's most precise assassination machine, and why killing the Tsar didn't end tyranny, it reprogrammed it. One decision on a St. Petersburg street rewired an empire. It unleashed a crackdown, accelerated underground warfare, and taught future revolutionaries that one spectacular death could outweigh 1,000 speeches. How did the radicals of Narodnaya Volya build a conspiracy strong enough to kill Alexander II, yet fail to achieve the freedom they claim to be dying for? The snow is churned into grey slush. Hooves strike stone. A carriage rolls along the canal in St. Petersburg. Inside, a man sits upright, calm by habit. He survived so many attempts that survival now feels like part of his job. Then a flash. A bomb hits the street and punches the air into a wave. Glass flies, metal screams. Guards fall. Smoke wraps around the wheels. The carriage stops. And the Tsar of Russia, Alexander II, does the one thing his security fears most. He opens the door. He steps out. He moves toward the wounded. A young man waits, close enough to see his face. Close enough to see the look of curiosity that comes right before disbelief. The second bomb detonates at his feet. When the smoke clears, the reforming Tsar is dying in the snow, and the question begins right there, in the slush and blood and silence. Who were the radicals who decided that this man, of all men, had to be blown apart in public? To understand the bomb, you have to understand the paradox. Alexander II is called the Liberator. He ends serfdom. He loosens censorship. He opens courts. He talks about a future that sounds almost constitutional. And yet, Russia is still an autocracy. The police still listen at doors. Exile still waits at the edge of every sentence. In the capitals, educated young people read forbidden pamphlets by candlelight. They argue about history as if it is a weapon. Some of them want the Tsar to lead reform. Some of them want the Tsar to lead reform. Some of them want him to fall so reform can begin. It is a time when patience is treated as betrayal. The radicals do not arrive from nowhere. They grow inside the reforms. They grow inside the disappointment that follows the reforms. Alexander gives change, then he limits it. He promises openings, then he slams them shut. And in that back and forth, a new idea hardens. If the state is a machine, then maybe one bolt holds the whole thing together. Maybe you do not need an army. Maybe you only need a bomb. But what happens to a person psychologically when they begin to believe that murder is a form of politics? The story does not start with explosives. It starts with students. In the 1860s and 70s, Russia's universities are crowded with young people from different classes. Some are nobles who feel guilty. Some are commoners who rage rage. Many feel both. They debate the West. They debate Russia. They debate whether progress is a road or a fire. A slogan circulates, "Go to the people." Young radicals leave the city and walk into villages. They dress simply. They try to teach peasants to read. They talk about land and freedom. They expect gratitude. They meet suspicion. The peasants have their own fears. They have seen authorities punish anyone who seems unusual. They have also been told for generations that the Tsar is the father and officials are the problem. So when the young radicals arrive, peasants sometimes report them. Arrests follow. Trials follow. Exile follows. And the psychology of the movement shifts. If the people do not rise when you speak, you start asking a darker question. Do you need to force history to move? Or are you simply wrong about the people you claim to love? The first bomb doesn't kill the Tsar, and that's when the real plan begins. Who counted on Alexander II doing the one thing every guard would forbid? Stopping to look. Stop thinking of this as an assassination plot. Think of it as a startup, and the next step is how they financed murder without getting caught. The state responds like a state. Informants, raids, surveillance. A young person's life can be decided by a single conversation overheard in a hallway. The radicals learn to live in shadows. They learn passwords. They learn coded notes. They learn how it feels to distrust even friends. And that constant pressure changes the inside of the movement. It rewards the people who can lie without blinking. It rewards the people who can disappear without regret. It pushes talkers aside and pulls doers forward. At first, the violence is small. A shot fired at a hated official. A knife in a doorway. A bomb tossed at a carriage. Each act creates a myth. Each myth recruits more believers, and each failure teaches a lesson. A state can survive a wounded official. A state can survive a dead governor. But can it survive a dead Tsar? Or does killing the head only make the body flail harder? Quick recap, here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. This wasn't a riot or a mob, it was a committee with minutes, budgets, and a hit schedule. Who taught a handful of students to run an operation the secret police couldn't crack in time? The organization that will finally kill Alexander II is not a mob. It is not chaos. It is a disciplined network called People's Will. Narodnaya Volya. The name sounds almost gentle. It suggests a democratic spirit. The will of the people, but the strategy is razor sharp. They believe that a single, spectacular act can crack the system. That assassination can force concessions. That fear can open the door to a constitution. They form committees. They keep records. They raise money. They build safe houses. And they debate ethics like surgeons. Is it acceptable to kill a ruler who signs death warrants? Is it acceptable to kill guards who are just doing their job? Is it acceptable to risk bystanders if the prize is the future? Some say no. That some say yes. Some say they have no choice. The movement's psychology becomes a narrowing tunnel. Once you accept the goal, you begin to accept the methods. And once you accept the methods, you begin to reshape your own conscience to survive what you do. But when conscience is reshaped, what shape does it become? The radicals claim they loved the people. Yet they chose a weapon designed for strangers on a public street. How many innocents were they willing to trade for one royal body? Within People's Will are people who do not look like monsters. They look like students, clerks, teachers. Some are women, which shocks the police and shocks polite society. They carry messages under skirts. They rent apartments under false names. They memorize routes and schedules. For many of them, this is not thrill-seeking. It is duty. They speak of sacrifice with a calmness that feels unreal. They know what waits if they are caught. Solitary confinement. Beatings, Siberian exile, and, for the leaders, the gallows. So they build a private world where death is always present. A world where you say goodbye to your family without telling them you are saying goodbye. A world where love becomes risky, because love can weaken resolve. A world where friendship becomes dangerous, because friendship can become a point of leverage. They are not only fighting the state, they are fighting their own fear. And fear has a way of demanding proof. If you are scared, you do something bigger. If you hesitate, you accuse yourself of betrayal. So the question becomes intimate. How do you know when you are brave, and how do you know when you are trapped by your own ideology? Alexander II is remembered as the Tsar who freed the serfs. So why did revolutionaries decide he was the one who had to die first? What did they know about his next move that made them rush the clock? Now rewind, because the most important explosion in this story happens on paper, and it's the document Alexander II nearly signed. Alexander II becomes a target long before he dies. There are attempts, shots, bombs, derailment plans. A plot that puts explosives under a dining room. Each time he lives, the government tightens the screws, and each time the radicals fail, they revise their approach. They study his habits. They learn his roots. They learn that routine is a kind of arrogance. The Tsar visits troops. He attends ceremonies. He rides in public because he believes visibility is strength. His guards are everywhere. But no guard can cover a sewer. No guard can cover a basement. No guard can cover a basement. No guard can cover the mind of a person willing to die. The radicals begin to think like engineers. They map streets. They measure distances. They calculate blast radius. They test chemicals. And beneath all of it, a private logic grows. If the Tsar represents the whole state, then killing him is not murder. It is surgery. But surgery requires precision, and when precision fails, the knife cuts whoever is closest. So what happens to the morality of a movement when it starts thinking in terms of blast radius? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. Inside the winter capital, there was a leak. Someone was always one step too close to the truth. Was Narodnaya Volya protected by genius, luck, or a traitor inside the state itself? In one plan, people's will digs. They rent a shop on a street the Tsar is expected to travel. They smile at neighbors. The mech beneath the floor, they cut into earth. Every shovel of dirt is a sentence in a secret confession. They work at night. They hide the soil. They listen for footsteps. They freeze when a board creaks. They bring in explosives. They set timing. They wait. But the Tsar changes his route. The bomb sits under an empty street. The radicals are left with something worse than failure. They are left with the knowledge of what they were ready to do. And in that knowledge, they become different people. When you have prepared to kill, backing away becomes harder, because to back away is to admit you crossed a line for nothing. So they try again, and again. But how many failed attempts does it take before the act becomes less about politics and more about proving you can finish what you started? They didn't just plan to kill a man, they planned to replace the rules of Russia overnight. What was their actual endgame for the morning after the assassination? Who would govern, and how? Forget the bombs for a moment. The real weapon is a rented room, and someone is about to knock on its door. Now the day arrives. March, cold air, a pale light. Alexander II leaves a military review. His carriage moves along a known path near the canal. People's will has placed bombers along the route. They are not soldiers. They are individuals with packages that look ordinary until they are thrown. They have rehearsed this moment in their minds until it feels like memory. The first bomb hits. It is not a direct strike. It is meant to stop the carriage. It is meant to create confusion. It is meant to pull the Tsar into the open. And it works. The Tsar steps out. There is chaos, but there is also a strange pause. In that pause, the second bomber comes close. He throws. The explosion is intimate. It is not distant artillery. It is body and metal and heat at arm's length. The Tsar collapses. The bomber is also torn apart. Bystanders are hit. Guards scream for help. And for a moment, the empire looks like any other thing that has been struck too hard, fragile, human. But even as the Tsar is carried away, another process begins. Revenge. So the question turns. When the king is dead, who becomes the main character of the story next? For months, the police chased shadows while the radicals rehearsed the murder like theater. Which single mistake, one face, one address, one slip of paper nearly collapsed the whole conspiracy. Alexander is taken to the Winter Palace, not to a throne room, to a private space where family can see what power looks like when it is bleeding. Doctors work quickly. They cannot undo what the bomb did. His legs are shattered. His abdomen is torn. He is conscious, then fading. His relatives gather. The scene is not only political, it is personal. A man who once signed reforms with steady hands is now unable to hold on to life. And outside, messengers run. Officials decide what to announce. Police decide what to seal off. The machinery of the state does not stop, it tightens. When he dies, the bells will ring. But they will not ring for freedom. They will ring for mourning and for warning. The radicals wanted a crack in the system. They have made one. But cracks can be repaired or widened into something worse. So here is the question. Did people's will just destroy an autocrat, or did they destroy the best chance Russia had for reform without catastrophe? The hunt begins immediately. The bombers are dead or captured. But the network remains. The police are not guessing anymore. They have bodies, they have debris, they have witnesses, they have addresses. A conspiracy is not a ghost after a public assassination. It is a trail. Arrests spread through the city. Safe houses become traps. Printing presses are seized. Letters are decoded. Friends are interrogated until they become enemies. People's will had built an underground world. Now that world is collapsing into the hands of the state. And the state is not only hunting names, it is hunting meaning. It wants a story that justifies everything it will do next. It will call the radicals monsters. It will call them foreign infected. It will call them devils. The radicals will call themselves martyrs. Both sides need the public to see the event in the right light. Because politics is not only force, it is narrative. So the question is this. After a political murder, who controls the story of why it happened? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. The Tsar had avoided death before, and each escape made him harder to reach. So why did the conspirators bet everything on a public route in daylight? What did they control that his guards didn't suspect? Here's the twist. The police weren't only chasing the terrorists were also hunting the police. The captured conspirators face trial. The court becomes a stage. The state wants confession and humiliation. The radicals want defiance and clarity. They speak about tyranny. They speak about justice. They speak about necessity. They are composed, sometimes frighteningly composed. This composure is part of the psychology of underground life. If you allow yourself to panic, you give the state everything it wants. So you speak as if you are already dead. That stance can look like courage. It can also look like dissociation. A mind protecting itself by stepping away from the body. The public watches and tries to decide what it is seeing. Are these young people heroes? Are they assassins? Are they both? Sentences come down, executions are scheduled, and the movement must decide what to do with the meaning of its own act. If the leaders die, does the idea grow, or does it finally rot? So the question remains, when you turn yourself into a symbol, do you gain power, or do you surrender it? One of the bombers was ready to die, but another was ready to live, and that difference mattered. Who among them imagined prison, exile, or betrayal as part of the plan? Alexander III takes the throne. He is not his father. He does not see reform as a path to stability. He sees reform as the weakness that invited the bomb. He chooses reaction. He strengthens the secret police. He tightens censorship. He limits local government. He pushes the empire toward Russification. If Alexander II was a paradox, Alexander III is an answer, a hard answer. The radicals wanted to force a constitution. Instead, they provoke a clampdown. This is the most bitter irony of political violence. A bomb is meant to open doors, but often it convinces the people in charge to lock them. And it convinces ordinary people to accept the lock, because fear is persuasive. So now, the legacy begins to form, not only in laws and prisons, in the psychology of an entire society, in the lesson that dissent can get you killed or can get the country punished. So the unanswered question becomes, if an assassination makes the state harsher, was the assassination a failure, or was the state always going to become harsher anyway? The state called them monsters, but in their letters they sound calm, almost tender. What kind of person can write about love at night and build a bomb in the morning? Hold that image of the bleeding Tsar, because the next scene is a dinner table where the decision to kill him becomes ordinary. People's will does not disappear overnight, but it changes. Some members flee, some hide, some argue about whether the tactic was wrong or simply incomplete. And this is where the psychological strain becomes visible. Living underground fractures identity. You have one name in public and one name in secret. You have one face for family and one face for comrades. You are always watching entrances. You are always reading tone. And in time, the world itself starts to look like an interrogation. Paranoia becomes a skill. Suspicion becomes virtue. A movement built on trust cannot survive without trust. But a movement hunted by police cannot afford trust. That contradiction eats the group from the inside. Some radicals turn inward and demand purity. Others turn outward and seek a bigger explosion. And some simply collapse into exhaustion. The bomb killed the Tsar. But it also killed the illusion that a single act could neatly reshape reality. So here is the question. When revolution fails to deliver the future it promised, where does the faith go next? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. After the assassination, the empire doesn't soften, it hardens. If the Tsar's death produced a harsher Russia, why did the conspirators believe violence would create freedom? This is not only a political story, it is a psychological one. What kind of person throws the bomb? Not in stereotype, in real terms. These are not people born into violence. Many of them are educated. Many are sensitive. Many of them are educated. Many are sensitive. Many are disgusted by cruelty, and that is part of what makes them dangerous. They feel the suffering of others as something personal. They cannot tolerate the slow pace of reform. They cannot tolerate the slows the state's indifference. So they moralize impatience. They turn urgency into identity. They begin to see compromise as contamination. This is a known psychological pathway. When you believe you possess the truth, and the truth is being crushed, then extreme actions begin to feel like self-defense, not defense of the body. defense of meaning, and once violence is framed as defense, it becomes easier to repeat. The act becomes proof that you are sincere, that you are not like the comfortable people who talk and do nothing. The bomb becomes a sacrament, but a sacrament demands believers, and believers demand enemies. So the question becomes, when a movement needs an enemy to stay coherent, can it ever stop fighting? There is also the psychology of the state. Autocracy is not only power, it is fear. It fears disorder. It fears disorder. It fears humiliation. It fears the precedent that a ruler can be punished by subjects. When people's will kills the Tsar, it does not only remove a man, it wounds the aura of untouchability. And wounded power lashes out. It seeks to restore the aura through punishment. It wants the public to feel that the state is not fragile. So it makes fragility illegal. It criminalizes speech. It criminalizes association. It criminalizes doubt. And that creates the spiral. Repression breeds rage. Rage breeds plots. Plots breed repression. Everyone becomes certain that the other side started it. And in a way, they are both right. The psychology becomes circular, it becomes self-justifying. So here is the question. If both sides are reacting to fear, who has the ability to break the cycle without losing everything? The most dangerous moment wasn't the explosion, it was the seconds after, when everyone could still choose differently. Who made the final decision that turned a failed attempt into a fatal one? Everything you think you know about the people in this story changes when you hear who actually built the bombs. Years pass. The assassination becomes a reference point. Every dissident knows the date. Every official remembers the lesson. The radicals who survive debate what went wrong. Some decide the peasantry will never rise the way the romantics imagined. Some decide that workers in cities are the future. Some decide that terror is not enough. Some decide terror is the only language the state understands. And in the next decades, new movements form. Socialists, Marxists, revolutionaries with different theories and the same willingness to risk everything. The Tsar's death does not end the story. It is an opening chapter of a darker book. Because when a ruler is killed by radicals, it teaches two opposing lessons. It teaches the state that it must be more brutal. It teaches the underground that brutality can be answered. And both lessons are poisoned. So the question becomes historical. Did the bomb on the canal make the later revolutions inevitable? Or did it simply make them more violent? Quick recap. Here's what we know so far, and the one detail that still doesn't fit. The radicals called their movement the people's will, but the people didn't vote on murder. So whose will was it really? Russia's, or a tiny circle convinced they alone could speak for millions? Imagine being one of the conspirators before the final act. You wake up and you do not know if you will sleep again. You eat bread and it tastes like paper. You walk the street and every stranger feels like a shadow with eyes. You rehearse the throw in your mind. You tell yourself you are doing this for millions. You tell yourself you are doing this so that children will not be beaten by landlords, so that conscripts will not die for nothing, so that courts will not be jokes, and then you picture the moment after the explosion. The screaming. The torn bodies. The blood that does not care about politics. You push the image away, because if you let it in, you cannot do the act. This is the psychological bargain. You narrow your empathy to widen your resolve. You call it discipline. But it is also self-protection. And once you learn to do it once, you learn you can do it again. So here is the question: what does it cost a person to amputate part of their empathy for a cause? And can that heart ever grow back? The canal where Alexander fell becomes a site of memory, a marker of what was done, a marker of what followed. In one reading, the radicals are criminals who murdered a man trying to modernize Russia. In another reading, they are desperate idealists who concluded that law had become impossible. And in the most uncomfortable reading, they are both at once. History often refuses to choose. It forces us to hold contradictions. Alexander II did reform, and he also maintained repression. People's will spoke of the people, and they also acted without the people. The assassination was meant to liberate, and it also helped justify a harsher era. The psychology of revolution is full of these reversals. It promises control over history. It delivers the chaos of unintended consequences. So when we return to the moment in the snow, we are not only watching a Tsar die, we are watching an argument explode, an argument about whether violence can ever create freedom. And that argument has not ended. It has only changed names. So here is the final unanswered question. If you could stand on that canal bank before the bombs were thrown, and you could speak one sentence to each side, what could you possibly say that would stop the fuse from being lit?